Tonight, we are talking about intention. Such an interesting topic and something that has been coming up quite a bit. I see Jennifer's here from Alabama, Rhonda's here from Kentucky, Candace is here from Tennessee. Awesome, awesome. Stephanie, hey, how are you? I think Stephanie is from Newfoundland, is that right? But one of the things that's very interesting about this whole subject of intention that has been coming up quite a bit, and I'd love for you to type into the chat why you feel this is. But I've noticed that our conversations, very often it's much easier for someone to express what they do not want versus what they do want. So a good example of this is that very often when I'm in a coaching conversation with a client, I rarely have the first thing that comes out of their mouth say, you know what I really want? I want this. Most of the time, and I don't want to say all the time, but most of the time, it starts out with, you know what I really don't want to have happen here is fill in the blank. So I am curious from those of you that are watching, because I know those of you that watch Wellness Wednesday, you are kind of deep thinkers like I am, and I would love to just kind of hear from you. We're going to kind of touch back into this at some point in the program, but I'd love to hear from you why you feel it is easier for people to kind of set that intention of this is what I do not want versus, oh, no, this is what I want here. Like, this is how I want it to be. So just pop that into the chat. We're gonna get rolling on a few things, but we're gonna come back to this. So just pop that into the chat when you have some time. So the thing that I really want to work on tonight with you all is I want you to have an opportunity to first check in with where you are currently. Because I think that that's a really important part of this is if we're going to set great intentions, we have to kind of know where we're at. If you've been watching Wellness Wednesday, I showed you kind of a self-coaching process that is based in what we teach professional coaches on how to go through a coaching process, which is where am I currently? Where do I want to go? And what is in between those two things? What might be blocking me or getting in my way? So it's really important that anytime we go to start setting that intention is we start to we have a skill set to recognize where we currently are. So I'm going to share something with you, and you're welcome to screenshot this so that you can use it for yourself. I mean, heck, I don't even care if you share it. You can do whatever you want with it because this is stuff that I love to talk about. But what I'm going to bring up on the screen, and again, if you've been watching Wellness Wednesday, we've done something similar to this in the past. So what we're going to do first, and if you have a piece of paper around, grab it and a pencil because you're going to be writing some stuff down, and you can also use the chat to help keep track of this. But what we're going to go through is we're going to go through and we're going to do a little bit of an index on where we feel like we are at in 7 key elements of life. These 7 key elements are things that you see very, very often in many different ways, but these to me that I've researched over time, I feel like this is pretty complete. So we're going to go through one by one, and we'll just touch on what each of these is, and you're going to give it 2 scores. So let's start with mental. We're going to start with mental. So when we talk about the mental pillar within your life, that essential piece, that mental piece is what is happening here. And I would think about things like, how's my clarity of mind? Is my mind in control of me, or am I in control of my mind? So mental wellness. So this is a little different from emotional. Sometimes when we talk about mental health, people think of like depression and things like that. That's not specifically what we're talking about with this particular part of the kind of essential elements. What I am sharing, or what I'm pointing towards with mental, is mental clarity, mental acuity. Do I actually have control over my mental capacities, or do they kind of have control over me? So you're going to give yourself 2 scores. The first score is how much time and energy are you investing into this element of your life? So how much time and energy throughout the day or throughout the week do you invest into that mental aspect of your life? So this might be, things that are stimulating to the mind. It might be maybe some of you are meditators, some of you have different practices to work on being in touch with that mental aspect. The second score on that first score, you're going to give yourself a score of either 5, which is very, very high, or down to 4, 3, 2, 1, 1 being the lowest. So 5 is you spend a lot of time. 1 is I don't really spend any time at all. And then everything in between. The second score you're going to give yourself is what is the quality of that element right now? So as you sit, and this is no judgment here. This is observation time. This is time to index where you currently feel like you are at. It's not time to beat yourself up about where you're at. So in that mental aspect, what is the quality of the mental aspect of your overall being right now? A would be excellent. It's awesome. It's exactly how I want it to be. Down to B, C, D, E. E would be, yeah, it's not where I want it to be. It's a mess. So if you are comfortable, I would love for you to type this into the chat. Give yourself 1 to 5 as far as how much time and energy are you investing into that mental pillar within your health, or not necessarily your health, I don't want to put it that way, but as a foundation to your overall being. And then the second score is, what is the current quality? And here's what's going to be kind of interesting, because the time and energy that you're putting in, is it giving you a result that you want too? So maybe for me, because I do spend a lot of time on my mental acuity through meditation and through other things that I do to keep my mind sharp, I might say that I'm giving myself 3 or 4 on this. Like I spend a decent amount of time. Maybe right now, because of other things that are happening within my world, maybe I'm giving it a lot of time and energy, but the quality is not the best. So maybe I might give myself a D as far as quality. So 1 is low time, up to 5, which is high time. And then the quality is A through E. So good. I'm seeing some of you pop in. Roller Girl. A Labrada. Wendy, good. Shirley. So, and if you're not comfortable popping into the chat, that is totally fine too. But what I would ask you to do is write it down on a piece of paper for you, because we're going to look at all of these scores as kind of a big picture. Miss Angel giving yourself a 3-3, so I'm thinking that's a 3 and a C. So great. Let's go to emotional. So emotional, here's what's really key about this one. Sometimes when we think of emotional, we're like, oh, I'm very emotional. I have a wide range of emotions. People tell me I'm very emotional. I need to get control of my emotions. Well, I might have a little different perspective on that, because I think having a wide range of emotions is actually a very healthy thing if they're not in control of us. So going from a place of like, oh, you know what, some days I feel really down. Some days I feel really happy. Those aren't unnatural things. I think one of the challenging messages that we've created sometimes is that being sad is this horrible bad thing. Well, it's part of us. It's part of who we are naturally. So I wouldn't say that if you get sad sometimes, you should score yourself emotionally low. In fact, if you're sad sometimes, but you can be present with it and be like, yeah, I kind of feel sad today, and that's okay. I think that is incredible emotional acuity. And if we can move past it and move to a different emotion later and be just as present with that emotion, I think you're doing fantastic. So that would be my perspective on emotional quality. So again, let's give ourselves kind of a score there. How much time and energy are you dedicating to your emotional wellness? And what do you feel like the quality is right now? And again, no judgment here. This is just observation. So give yourself how much time and energy, 1 being low, 5 being high. And then what's kind of the quality of that emotional energy within you right now? Is it A, I feel awesome. I think my overall emotional state is fantastic. Or is it B, like, yeah, it's pretty good. Or is it C, like, pretty much right down the center? Or is it D or E where you're like, yeah, it's not in a great space right now? So just pop that into the chat again if you feel comfortable. Good roller girls given 2, 3, or a C. Yeah, Shirley. She said that she's heard a term toxic positivity. Made me really look at it. Yeah, and that sense of toxic positivity, very often, I think what it's referring to is when we come back at someone that is having a rough time with this sense of like, oh, you'll be fine. Come on, put on a happy face. You're lucky to have what you have. That's kind of toxic positivity because at that point, that's not really what that person needs, right? Cool. Wendy's saying 5C. Good. Putting a lot of time into that. And it might be similar practices to the mental well-being. I think one of the practices that I do for my emotional well-being is that time in the morning that I spend in meditation, breath work, yoga practices. I think a lot of the stuff I expose myself to as far as podcasts and reading, that contributes to my emotional well-being. So let's go to spiritual, number 3. So spiritual, this is really, you have to define this one because I think every single person has to create what they believe is that spiritual foundation for themselves. That's a personal belief of mine. So you decide what that means if your spiritual element is an A through an E. Maybe A is like, yeah, you know what? Like if you're a churchgoer, like, I go to church, I love my church, I'm praying every night, I'm doing those kind of things. For some of us, it might be, again, maybe it's that I'm doing my meditations, I'm doing my, anything that might be spiritual. For me personally, one of the things that contributes to my spiritual well-being is going for a hike, being out in nature with my dog or with my friends or with my wife. So, for each person, that's going to be a little bit different. So again, give yourself a score of how much time and energy are you investing. I know that for me right this moment, the amount of time and energy that I'm putting into it isn't what it typically is, honestly. I might score myself time and energy a little bit lower than typical right now. Quality wise, I might kind of say that too, because I do feel like they're fairly tied together for me. So again, no judgment, just observation for yourself. Again, if you're not comfortable popping into the chat, please just write it down on a piece of paper or something because we want to be able to see these or for yourself at the end. Let's go to financial. So financial health, again, I think this is a pretty self-explanatory one. And again, it's going to have a little bit to do with what you feel great financial health or wellness might be for you. For me, it's knowing that we have the finances that we need in the bank. It's knowing that we're planning for our future. It's also knowing that I probably don't spend nearly enough time and energy in this. But again, no judgment right now. It's just observation. It's just me recognizing that right now I'm not giving that much time or energy. Luckily, the quality isn't too low. Good. Seeing some comments. Claudia, Tia, Nicholas, Akash popping in there. Good, Katie. Great. Stephanie's laughing. Wendy, K1A. Nice. That's great if you're not spending much time, and it's awesome. 3C for spirituality for Shirley. Great. All right, let's keep this moving. So relational. What I mean by relational is what is our quality of relationship? I would say that we want to check in with this both exterior and interior. We want to look at what is the quality of the relationships that we have outside of ourselves. That might be with our friends, our family, our coworkers, our business partners, whatever that might be for you, but also internally. What's the relationship I have with myself? And maybe this even has a little tie to spirituality if there's kind of a spiritual being that you have a relationship with. But, tapping into what are my relationships like? I feel like we would like to say, oh, well, that depends. And I would agree, it probably does depend what the outside quality looks like. But I feel like we also need to check in with the fact that typically what we see in one relationship kind of shows up in other relationships too. And so, again, not to judge it or to say, like, oh, well, this is better than that. But some relationships are just much easier. We might not be putting any more time or energy into it, but the quality is pretty good because it's easy. Over here, I'm probably not necessarily doing anything different time or energy wise, but the quality might not be that great because it's a different type of relationship. But if we can kind of look at it from a broad spectrum, if we can kind of give ourselves a big overarching score, and that's what we're looking for right now. Roller Girl saying 7B. So I didn't even know we had a 7 in there. That's awesome. That's extra points. All right, so give your score on the relational, and let's go to professional. Now, this is, exactly what it sounds like. What do you feel like that pillar within your life, that professional pillar, how is that for you? How much time and energy are you putting into it? What is the quality of it? I do find that very often this one can be a bit of a paradoxical one. When we're starting to look at our overall scores, which we'll do here in just a moment, this one can be kind of interesting because very often it could be the thing that we're putting the most time and energy into. And one of the things that the quality, maybe it's not the best. And so this is a great, great place to get into observation so we can see, oh, wow, you know what? I'm investing a lot into this. And I'm not sure how great the quality of it is in my life. So again, with professional, if you are comfortable popping into the chat, let's throw it into the chat. If not, mark it down on a piece of paper so you have something to reference. And let's go to our final one, physical. Pretty simple, right? How's the physical body? How much time and energy are we putting into the physical body? Now, this could be exercise. This could be movement. This could be breath work. This could be food. This could be so many different things. So many different things contribute to our overall wellness as far as physical body goes. So think about how much time and energy are you investing into the physical form. Maybe you're not spending a ton of time like going to the gym or being active, but you know what? I spend a lot of time meal prepping, making sure that like my vitamins are great. I do breath work. Hey, those are all great contributions to the physical form. So, consider those things as well. And then what's the quality? How are you feeling about the overall physical pillar within your life? Cool. So I'm going to just scroll back. She bypassed the compressor. I'm just going to scroll back through real quick to make sure I did not miss any questions. Hey, Labrada had asked score based on self or other. I think you're asking about the relational. So I kind of put those in the same category. Maybe you want to give yourself a score for both, honestly, if you feel like they're very different. Well, I like that, Katie. Everyone likes a good Star Wars joke. Physical 2B continued. I like that. Awesome. So here's what we want to do. We want to take a look at these things. I hope that you wrote these down, because what we don't expect from ourselves is we don't expect perfection. And if I want to bring us back to this, because there's a perception of balance that is propagated within our world that I find to be terribly unrealistic, which is that things should be this kind of straight and narrow path, and it should all be even, and it should all kind of equal quality to it. Most of the time, balance just brings more stress. It's a lot of we should be a certain way. And also, I feel like it does create a lot of disappointment, because if our expectation is that throughout the weeks and months and years of our life, that we're going to somehow, keep our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, relational, financial, if we're going to keep all of those things on this even playing field, dedicate even time and energy to that, good luck. If you figure that out, then please call me and tell me the secret, because So far, I haven't met a single person that really lives that life. So I would suggest that you take the concept of balance out and bring in the sense of harmony. Because harmony, as we can see kind of through the dotted red line there, harmony allows for this to happen. It allows for the dips, and it allows for the crests. It allows for the ups and downs. It's about being compassionate to ourselves. It's about being in a state of acceptance of who and what and where we are in our life. Let me come back to something that I know that if you've watched this program often, you're probably sick of hearing me say, but acceptance of where we are is not approval. That's really important to recognize. Acceptance is not approval. It is also not disapproval. When we step into acceptance, it's recognizing where we are for what it is. This is where I'm at. I don't have to judge it because where I'm at right now is an experience of my history, my past education, my past practices. Yeah, Shirley, it's like surfing the wave. Absolutely. Absolutely. Stephanie's saying harmony rules. Yes. Greetings to Germany, Rocky. So I would suggest that even as you take a look at these scores, that you keep in mind that we're not looking for balance. We're not looking at consistency. We're looking for harmony. And so in this moment right now, I want you to look at this whole picture that you have created for yourself of mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relational, professional, and physical pillars. With the understanding, again, that it's not an expectation to have all of this be an equal. Take a look at the scores and find maybe some places that it's like, oh, yeah, this place has kind of fallen off the map for me. Look at some of the places, too, that maybe it's getting all of your energy. And again, checking in with if it's getting all of your energy, are you actually getting the results that you want? Are you at a 5, but is it a 2? Or sorry, is it a 5, but you're at a D as far as the quality of it? Because then we start to look at, okay, you're putting a lot of time and energy into this. So what kind of time and energy are you investing into it? And is it your best place to be putting your time and energy? Also look at the opportunities that you have to take something and just tweak it. Because there might be some things in here that you feel are really important to you now, where you are at currently in your life. So an example might be that, hey, I'm about to start this new position. I know that the great resignation is happening right now. People are moving to different jobs, leaving this work, going to that work. And so there's a lot of anxiety that happens as we make those transitions. So right now, maybe that like mental strength is like super important to you. You're like, you know what, during this transition, having my mental aspect of that mental pillar be really stable is really key to this current part of my life. Maybe even a little bit more so than, and I'm not suggesting that this is true, I'm just giving you examples, but maybe you might go, you know what, that's almost more important to me right now than even my relationships. Like right now with this transition, I got to be here, I got to be present, I got to be dialed in. So when we look at that piece, we can say right now with this stage of my life, it's okay if the harmony shifts towards me focusing on that aspect of my life. Because again, it doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be balanced. It'd be beautiful if it could be, but in my opinion, it's an unrealistic expectation. So look at the map, look at your scores, and think, okay, where needs my attention right now? Because it's really key to my current experience. You know, I know that over the last 2 years, the emotional aspect has been challenging, right? It's been really challenging with the ups and downs and twists and turns that we've all experienced. And so, again, just recognizing what is a place right now that is important to you. So, again, I think it's a great thing too if it all just feels too overwhelming, if it's all like, oh man, there's this and there's that and there's the other thing, which I know that, you know, especially those of us that are perfectionists, this kind of stuff can get really overwhelming. So It might also be, where can you just start? Where is it on this map that maybe you're like, you know what? Yeah, it's a 2. I'm not investing a whole lot of time into it. And right now the quality is like, it's sort of a D or a C. But you know what? It wouldn't take much to shift that to a 3 and just give it a little bit more love, just to kind of get me on the track, something simple, something easy. Because a lot of times when we're feeling stuck or we're feeling overwhelmed, it's just getting the ball rolling. Good timing for this, but I was listening to a speech by Colin Powell one time. And if you have never heard Colin Powell speak, I would highly recommend you look up some of his stuff, because brilliant speaker. And during this speech, he was recognizing the fact that yes, of course he had made mistakes as the leader of our military, which I thought was brilliant, that someone like that would actually step up and just be honest. Like, yeah, I made my mistakes, but what I knew is that if I kept the ball moving forward, I could always change the direction of it. But if we get stuck and we stop and we get frozen in decisions or in inactivity, it's really hard to get the ball moving again. And so that's where I think a lot of times we kind of get stuck in this place where it feels like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, my physical health isn't great, which is causing my mental health to not be great. My emotional health's kind of a mess right now. I haven't been, going to my meditation class, so my spiritual stuff, you might look at this and all over the board, you're kind of like, none of this is where I want it to be, which causes this kind of like overwhelm of, oh my gosh, what do I do here? That's where I think it's really important to do something to just move the needle, just move the ball so that you can get some momentum back. Because it feels really good when we get that sense of accomplishment, like, yes, I'm moving towards something. Once we get that momentum, then we can feed some of that momentum into other places. Very often at the end of a coaching session, my question to my coaching client is, what's one really small thing that can move you towards this week? Just something that's really, really simple, really easy, doesn't feel overwhelming. And I think that's a really key part to this. I'm just going to check in real quick on comments because, yes, Shirley says, I need to post this all over the house, that acceptance is not approval. Good. Roller Girl likes that quote. Awesome. Wendy says, gives me pleasure. Awesome. Katie, yes, you do not have to balance everything perfectly. Ooh, okay, that's a good, I like this, Shirley. I'm going to actually bring this up on screen because this is another great point with this overall taking stock on things. Sometimes it feels like almost everything is just sitting in that middle of the road. And especially for those of us that have lived ourselves kind of high achievers, this can feel really uncomfortable. I would say that this past year was a huge lesson for myself with this exact thing, which, I made that transition from being the education director of Samvia into focusing on my own coaching company while still doing things here with the Samvia company. But it just felt like a huge shift and a huge change. And I kind of went into that change feeling like I really had to push into it and I really had to like put all my energy into it. But there was something that kind of kept coming back to me that sort of kept me from going full gusto, from just like, oh, I got to tackle this thing. And I recognize kind of what you just shared here, Shirley, is a lot of that last year, I did feel almost a discomfort of being sort of in that, like, everything's okay. Like nothing's crazy good, nothing's crazy this, nothing's crazy that. Everything was just kind of okay. And it felt good, but it was a little uncomfortable. But I kind of feel like the same thing that you're sharing here, which is almost like it was a time for me to just be in that middle place. It was just a time for me to sort of just be chill and relax and save up that energy, save up that kind of, that, we'll just go with energy. That's a better word for it. So that it was there when it was ready to strike. And I feel like it came into 2022, some things shifted and it felt like, okay, it's time to out a little bit. So I love that you shared that, because I think sometimes that's hard to accept too, that it's okay to just be in that middle space. Awesome. Yeah, I love this comment. I'm not sure which of the team put it in there, but Sammy said nothing wrong with a season of waiting or holding. I love that. Good question, Roller Girl. I like this. And please pop into the chat if you have a question for this or an answer for this for Roller Girl. I'd love to hear what others are feeling. What to do when others in the house lack motivation. That is a good question because almost just what we just talked about, too. What is the perception for us? What do we consider a lack of motivation? What shows us a lack of motivation? Is just kind of living life and that kind of middle road. Do we look at that as lack of motivation? So might need to check in a little bit like with what our expectations are within that too. So again, if you all have some things you would like to share, please do. But I want to bring us back to this just real quick because I just want to kind of put a little bow on this particular piece. Within this, again, I think what is really important is now that we have this observation, we can step back and look at all these different pieces of our life. We also have now the opportunity to start to create an intention towards something. We have the opportunity to look at those places that are getting lots and lots of our attention and maybe are even doing really great and say, okay, well, this thing over here, I feel like does really need my attention. I don't necessarily feel like I just have a bunch of extra time and energy to spend on anything right now. So we may have to delegate some of the time and energy to something else. So those things that are really up here and like, oh, we're spending a 5, they're doing great. Is it okay if we back that off to a 4? Is it okay if we say, you know what? Maybe I don't need 60 minutes of meditation every single morning. Maybe I need 60 minutes of meditation 4 mornings a week. And that's going to be okay for now because 2 or 3 other days a week, I kind of need to get to work a little early and get my business plans in order. Maybe that's what's needed for this moment in time. Just an example, not a suggestion by any means. So again, it's just looking at where is the time and energy going, what's working, what's not working, and where can we start to shift that attention. So I would like to now, sorry, give me 1 second here. I want to just kind of swing way back to the beginning because I asked you all a question. I asked you a question of why is it that it seems easier for us to share, this is what I do not want when we're talking about what's the intent here? What do we want from this? Well, I can tell you what I don't want. Okay, that's okay. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with identifying what you don't want in a situation. I am not the kind of coach to say that's a waste of your time. In fact, I think it's great clarity to say, yeah, all that stuff over there, that is not me. I think that's fine. What I'm curious about is why do we go there first? Why is that typically the first reaction? Well, this is what I don't want. Instead of, oh yeah, what I really want. This is the picture. This is what would bring me the most joy. This is the vision that I have. Why is that harder to go to? So I'm just going to check back in because I know that we got some comments. Miss Zombie Angel says, it's easy to look at the negative. It's easy to look at the negative, easier to look at the negative than it is at our blessings. I feel lots of people don't feel worthy of the good stuff. Okay, so worthiness kind of comes up. Great. Katie's saying fears. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Shirley's saying a lack of clarity around what I really want, but I sure know what I don't want. That's my experience. Okay, great. I love that. Ellen's saying she feels that we do speak our fears more sometimes. Good. Good. Just seeing if there's any others. Okay, cool. So when he's saying that's hard for us overachievers, right? Oh, when he's saying half empty or half full on the glass, right. And Glenda, yeah, you're kind of saying a similar thing. It's like we don't really know what we really want. So I think that's a great, I think those are all great observations, because a lot of times in our experiences, what's motivating us is these things that we have experienced that it's like, ooh, yeah, that's pretty easy to identify. Those are all the things I do not want because I've experienced them. I don't like those things. So, it might be easier sometimes to reflect on those. Glenda, yeah, absolutely. Maybe it's some fear of success. Absolutely, which is such an interesting thing, right? Uh, Craft of beauty, limited beliefs stopping us from experiencing our full capacity of joy. Absolutely. I think there's that belief system in there. Stephanie. Oh, okay. Was in response to the question about others in the house having lack of motivation. We have influence over others, but not control. All we can do is focus on our own motivation and energy. And the higher, better we do with our own, the better we can do with supporting our loved ones. Bonus, the better we do this, the less we will be affected by anyone's moods. Love that. Thank you. Coach Stephanie Russell. You're awesome. We're actually going to have her on the show here pretty soon. Oh, okay, Shirley. I like this perception too. It's like clearing out the rubbish to see a clean surface. So yeah, and again, I don't want to necessarily demonize looking at what we don't want. I don't feel like that's necessarily a bad thing. And I like how you put that. I feel like that's a great way to look at it. And it is how I feel about it too. Very often it's sort of like, yeah, okay, if we can identify this is all the stuff we don't want, it kind of takes it off the table. It's like I do have a messy desk right now. I've got like multiple cups. I've got my little like dongle thing that I have to use. I've got pens. I've got guitar picks. I've got sheets of paper. So, as I was preparing for Wellness Wednesday, I probably could have done well to say, what do I not need here? What are all the things that I don't need on this cluttered surface, and get rid of those, because that helps with clarity. So I love that. I think what's really important is recognizing that once we do that, we do need to start the intent of what we do want. I think this is the missing piece, because I do think it's easier. I do think sometimes it is our fears of the successes. It's our fears of being seen as selfish. That comes up very often when I've had these questions, when I've asked this question to some of my coaching clients. I asked this to my good friend, Sean Float. And I do think that even kind of societally, it has just become a pattern. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I often say that sometimes when I go back there, it's almost like the default conversation, specifically in the town that I grew up in, is just, oh, here's all the crap that's happening. Let's complain about this. Let's get upset about that. It's just sort of the default. And I'm not actually saying that with judgment or like that they're terrible people because of it. Because if that is what we have grown up around, if that is what we've been raised on, which I was, and I recognized that in myself, then expecting ourselves to do something else is kind of unrealistic until we become conscious of it and make a conscious decision to do something else. So right now, this is our opportunity to do that. Claudia, yeah, standards, learning from others apart from our own experiences. Yes, absolutely. It's easier to be negative sometimes. It is, absolutely. And again, I think it's such a combination of different things. And I do think that there's a cultural learning aspect. None of us, okay, and let me make this really clear too. None of us, well, I don't want to say none of us, because there probably are some examples here. Most of us, most of the time, we're not consciously taught, hey, you should focus on what you don't want in this world. I doubt that most of us had a conversation with any of our mentors, our parents, anything like that, where they sat us down at the table and they said, Blanca, Stephanie, Shirley, Glenda, what you should really do most of the time is focus on what you don't want in life. That's probably not how this education happened, but we have subconscious community education that is happening all the time, because the subconscious up here is an awareness machine. It is picking up and listening and hearing things and observing things constantly to keep us safe and to keep us educated. So if the group of people that I grew up around, every time we sat down at the dinner table, well, this is what happened at work today. It was so terrible. I hate this. I don't want this in my life. I don't like that. And we never really heard anyone sit down at the dinner table and say, you know what? This is what I would really love more of in my life. This is what would make me really happy in life. This is what would bring more joy and peace into my life. If we didn't have that modeled for us, and we didn't consciously choose that education, how would the subconscious, especially, even have a clue on how to do that? So, this is where we now get to make a conscious choice. What I would suggest is, now that you have the awareness of these different pieces of your life, now that you have the awareness that very often we do tend to focus on what we do not want, now you have an opportunity to shift that and start to say, okay, this is what I do want. What I do want with my mental health is I want to feel okay with the ups and downs of my days. I want to be able to be present with the sadness when that comes and fully present with the happiness when that's there too. That's what I do want, because it's going to make me happy. It's going to make me feel more peaceful. It's going to make me feel more harmonious, whatever that might be. But it's targeting what we do want. And one of the other things that very often came up as I started to ask people the question, why do we typically go to this place of, well, here's the things I don't want? It's because there's this thing that believes that if we don't look at all that stuff that we don't want, that somehow we might get blindsided by it. That's an interesting one, right? If somehow we turn this direction, which isn't what we're doing, by the way, but I think this is the perception that we have. Over here's all the dangerous, crappy stuff that we don't want. Over here's all the awesomeness that we do want. When we turn towards what we do want, somewhere in the subconscious, it's like, well, don't turn your back on all that other stuff. But that's not really going to happen. We are conscious of those things. So focusing on what we do want and drawing ourselves towards what we do want and taking the steps towards us does not mean you are turning a blind eye to all the other stuff that you don't. That's not, it's not a black and white system like that. So we can, it's okay, Claudia. We all got what she just, or they just, I don't know if what your identity is, but Claudia just mentioned, sorry about the typos. I just read my comment. It's okay. We got it. We got what you said. So we don't have to worry about the things over here, because guess what? The subconscious is turned on all the time. When danger comes, one of the best things you can start to tune into more is your intuition, because the intuition will always alert you when that danger's there. Sometimes we override the intuition, or we haven't listened to it enough to be in tune with it. But you don't necessarily have to be so concerned about all the potential downfalls, because the subconscious, which wants to keep you safe, that deeper sense of intuition that sits down in our belly, those things will be on point and help keep you safe as your heart, your mind, your conscious mind focuses on what you do want. So, ooh, yes, Ruby Lynn Mama. I love that. Set intentions today for tomorrow's blessings. I love that. Yes, yes, yes. So, that's what I wanted to cover tonight. I wanted to give us an opportunity, especially as we started to jump into 2022, to just kind of take some stock of where we are, because, a lot of us aren't into the New Year's resolutions. Maybe we haven't done those types of things, and that's okay. So I wanted to give us an opportunity as a group to sit down and have a conversation. And I thank you all so very, very much to how interactive you always are. It's so great. So yes, Wendy, the safety does take over. It kind of tends to hijack us sometimes, and we have to be conscious of that. But I do thank you all for being really interactive with this. What I hope that you're coming away with is this idea that let's start to turn our attention to what we do want. By all means, like I said, I don't demonize this concept of, hey, I want to be clear about what I don't want. Great, be clear about it. Get rid of that crap. If that is our focus, it is really difficult for us to focus on what we do want because the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So choose to put the conscious focus into what you do want and let the subconscious, let the intuition make sure that all that other stuff that stays over here for us. And it'll tell us if it does come knocking at the door. I don't know where you all live, but I do want to let you know I do actually have a live class coming up, a live in-person class coming up on January 31st. It's in West Hartford, Connecticut. It's a full day coaching experience with me. We're going to be diving into connection. So we're going to be looking at communication styles, our communication energy, how that interacts with other people's communication energy. We're going to be diving into the core values exercise and how that turns into a really deeply guiding principle for us and how to utilize that guiding principle. So it's a full day of group kind of coaching, a full day of community. I totally understand that some people do not feel like this is the right time to be gathering. And I completely respect that. And this might not be the right time for you. We are going to be very safe. We're going to ask that everyone takes a COVID test before they arrive that day so that we feel like we can get back into community. Again, I totally appreciate it if it's not the right time for you. But if you are in the area and you would like to come in and do some live work with me, I would love to have you there. You can just go to my website, thejourneyist.life. Let me get my name banner up here for you. You can go to thejourneyist.life and just click on the events tab, and all the details is under the events tab. So that's January 31st in West Hartford, Connecticut. And I would love to meet some of you that I have not gotten to meet in person.